Kia ora, ko Craig McCulloch aho. Welcome to Focus on Politics, a special 2024 retrospective focusing on politics in 2024, with just a sprinkling of sass.
It's an entitlement. I'm well within the rules.
If you don't get that sushi's woke, I don't know how to wake you up.
Please resign.
Did he call the worker a loser?
Yes.
It was a year of change as the coalition stamped its mark, ending the woolly well-being years of Labour in favour of a new KPI corporate machine. In keeping with convention, we start with January and a very Green Party, starting as it meant to continue.
The high-profile Green Party MP Golriz Gaharaman has stood aside from all her portfolios after being accused of shoplifting.
Well, back here, and the Green Party says it was advised about a second alleged shoplifting incident involving...
A third allegation of shoplifting has emerged.
The self-proclaimed party of principle this year revealed just what that principle was: self-sabotage.
Golriz Gaharaman has resigned from Parliament effective immediately.
It would be just the beginning of turbulence for the Greens this year, and a perhaps prescient James Shaw quickly exited stage left, stepping down as co-leader.
I guess I'm standing down because I feel that my time here and my work here is complete.
Translation, your problem now. The Greens were not the only ones to have their summer slumber interrupted. As well, the coalition parties were given a taste of trouble to come, as Māori massed at Ngaruawahia to oppose the new government's agenda, and in particular, the ACT Party's Treaty Principles Bill.
You are marginalising us.
An illiterate white supremacist in power is dangerous.
The message was carried through Ratana and then on to Waitangi, where both sides engaged in civil discourse.
You and your shitty-ass bill are going down the toilet.
It's got to be a debate based on respect.
Some of us were out there before you were born fighting for Maori land rights. Get an education.
I'm sure it'll all blow over in no time. As the year rolled on, so too did the roll back, with the three-headed taniwha rattling through its to-do list. The smoke-free generation law went up in smoke, Three Waters went down the drain, and the Māori Health Authority was deauthorised. Acknowledging that upheaval would cause some upset, the coalition wheeled out its most tactful diplomat.
Mining is coming back. Goodbye, Freddie. I don't want to hear from the galah over there. I belong to New Zealand first, not climate first. New Zealand is open again for business.
The opposition as well was going through some change of its own. Labour's Grant Robertson quit to head up Otago University, and Chloe Swarbrick drew the short straw, appointed the new Green co-leader. And then, tragedy. The Green MP for Anana Efeso Collins unexpectedly collapsed and died after taking part in a charity run in Auckland.
Lamanuia Lomalanga. Farewell on your journey, my friend.
Farewell for Anana. At the end of February, Warner Brothers Discovery announced a plan to shut down Newshub, a proposal which later became reality. Media Minister Melissa Lee met the news with deep empathy.
Well, there's Sky as well. There's a whole lot of other medias about.
Smoke-free Minister Casey Costello got in a pickle after telling RNZ she had not specifically asked for advice on freezing tobacco tax, despite having asked for advice on freezing tobacco tax.
I had no intention of misleading the House, and I apologise for any confusion.
The minister admitted she had sent her officials that idea as part of a collection of papers which had been sitting on her desk, except she couldn't say where those papers had come from or even who'd written them.
I couldn't tell you the author of that document.
Do things in her office just appear out of thin air?
The year's march continued into March, and former Air New Zealand boss Christopher Luxon was becoming acquainted with the various pitfalls of prime ministerial life. Such was the cost of living crisis that even the PM was scrounging for extra support. Revelations came he was claiming a $1,000 a week accommodation allowance to live in his own mortgage-free apartment, all the while his official residence sat empty.
Look, it's part of an entitlement. It's an entitlement, and it's an entitlement. I have and I'm just entitled to the entitlements. Look, it's an entitlement, and I'm well within the rules.
That resolve, though, soon weakened on hearing the talkback torrent on News Talk ZB. So he phoned in to backtrack.
Are you telling me, Chris, are you telling me that Kerry and I changed your mind?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, we did some good for the country.
Keen to escape the distraction, he set his sights on Melbourne for a leaders' summit. When in opposition, Mr Luxon said he'd never use the ancient Boeing 757s for travel. Fitting then that the 757 promptly broke down, forcing the PM to fly commercial.
Our political reporter Annika Smith was meant to be on the flight too. She joins us now from the tarmac. Annika, I take it you're not going anywhere in a hurry?
No, Corin, we're parked up indefinitely.
The promised public sector job cuts began in earnest, with ministries releasing their change proposals, and back at the Greens, there were more personnel changes too.
More turmoil in the Green Party today, with the shock announcement this morning that the Green MP Darlene Tana has been suspended. This follows allegations of migrant exploitation involving her husband's business.
You can rest assured there's more on that coming. Missing the limelight, the New Zealand First Leader and Cheshire Cat, Winston Peters, headed to the thriving metropolis of Palmerston North to deliver a State of the Nation address. Alas, he got the wrong nation in the wrong era.
I've seen that sort of philosophy before. I saw it in Nazi Germany. We all did.
Right about now, the Labour Party elected to emerge from the wilderness, licking its post-election wounds. Remember the Labour Party? Struggling to get much cut-through in opposition, its leader and sausage roll ambassador Chris Hipkins settled on the one subject certain to create headlines: tax.
We're going back to the drawing board. We lost the election. That means that we do have to take the opportunity to go back and to reflect and to come up with something different for next time.
Ah yes, when has tax ever caused Labour problems before? In April, the Prime Minister announced a surprise reshuffle. Unimpressed with Penny Simmons and Melissa Lee, both shuffled right out of their roles.
I want to make sure I've got all my aces in their places, that people are really contributing. This is how I roll.
Entering May and approaching the year's midway mark, the Greens decided they were overdue another scandal.
Green MP Julianne Genter has apologised in Parliament after National accused her of intimidating and attacking one of its ministers in the House.
Yes, cycling enthusiast Julianne Genter threw something of a tantrum in the debating chamber, crossing the floor to berate Minister Matt Ducey, waving a report in the ear and demanding he read it.
Ms. Genter, please resume your seat.
The Greens' hijinks were becoming too much for some.
I was actually astonished to see what I heard the other day. There have got to be standards.
Yes, think of Parliament's standards, bemoaned noted paragon of politeness, Winston Peters.
Throw Fatty out. Sick idiot. Political cuckold. Retard comment. Oh, tell us about the budget, he said.
The government also announced its plans to overhaul the school lunch program, only for ACT leader and disproportionate influencer David Seymour to reveal he had the palate of a preschooler.
Oh, look, if you don't get that sushi's woke, I don't know how to wake you up. Quinoa or quinoa, as I've recently learned, rice and quinoa had a baby and it wasn't good.
On went the cost-cutting and the public sector job cuts. But no worries, politicians got a pay bump, as decided by the Independent Remuneration Authority. Despite being entitled to that entitlement, the PM this time preempted the backlash, promising he'd give his to charity. The first-term National MP David McLeod also gave some of his back, though not by choice. He was stripped of his select committee roles and the extra pay that came with them after revelations he failed to declare a bunch of donations, just shy of $180,000.
I'm extremely disappointed in myself.
He stuffed it up big time.
But by far the biggest whoopsie of May came courtesy of the budget, after ministers failed to fund the cancer drugs they had promised.
We regret that it hasn't been possible in this budget.
They certainly came to regret it after an almighty public backlash.
I know how people are feeling. I know how frustrated they feel about it. I know what cancer sufferers are going through.
At least everyone got tax cuts. The blowback forced the government into a scramble and eventually a solution: lots more funding for Pharmac. The cancer conversation soon got very real, with the sad announcement in June that Green co-leader Marama Davidson would go on leave after being diagnosed herself with breast cancer.
If anything, this diagnosis has given me even more passion and energy to do the mahi.
Also in June, Te Pāti Māori found itself under scrutiny over claims a marae misused census data to help the party's election campaign. It denied all wrongdoing. Those investigations remain underway. Christopher Luxon, meanwhile, was off overseas again, this time to Japan via Papua New Guinea, off for another spin on that trusty 757.
For the second time this year, the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has been let down by a Defence Force plane.
We are still on the ground.
A blown fuse meant Air New Zealand had to fly to the rescue. The delegation shuffled onto a commercial flight and then on to Tokyo. And what a delegation. The PM told News Talk ZB his lineup boasted the best in the biz. far better than those taken by Jacinda Ardern.
I felt a lot of our delegations, when we did the few that we did do in the last 6 years, had just got very watered down to sort of the C-list, really.
Yes, those notorious C-listers like Zespri and Fonterra. Back once more with the Greens, the investigation into Darlene Tana finally wrapped up, and the Greens declared her persona non grata.
Darlene Tana's behaviour falls far short of our expectations of any Member of Parliament. Please resign.
Fat chance of that. Darlene Tana returned to Parliament defiant, declaring herself to now be an independent MP. The Greens membership convened to consider whether to eject her out of Parliament, and agreed to reconvene to consider whether to eject her out of Parliament. That would require them to use the waka jumping provision, except the Greens hate the waka jumping provision. So surely they won't do that. Surely not. Not having previously called it this.
Draconian, obnoxious, anti-democratic, insulting piece of legislation.
And this.
Frankly, appalling, odious attack on democracy.
And this.
We would not exercise as a party this piece of legislation.
Darlene Tana, for one, wasn't so sure, and in August she launched legal action. She ultimately lost, but succeeded in delaying the Greens meeting for a few more months' salary. This year's Koronehana commemorations took a more political turn than usual as the Māori King movement set out its staunch opposition to that Treaty Principles Bill. MPs came to kōrero, with one notable exception.
We have one word to say to David Seymour. You can run and hide, but we will always be here.
A week later, David Seymour got a second chance after Kingi Tuhatia's sudden and shocking death.
May you rest in peace.
In September, the law and order debate reared its head as the coalition pursued its crime crackdown, fronted by notorious tough guy Paul Goldsmith.
If you're a gang member, your days of operating above the law are over. This isn't just a warning, it's a fact. The game has changed.
But the stats hadn't changed in quite the way the government would have wanted. Police numbers were down and gang numbers up. That's even after the gang list was sanitised and a bunch of names scrubbed.
No disrespect, but it's not about the frickin' targets. It's actually about the outcomes.
Meanwhile, the Police Commissioner Andy Coster announced he was leaving the job early to instead head up the government's Social Investment Agency, whatever that is. Both he and the PM said the move had nothing to do with their differences over policing, even though Mark Mitchell had been a staunch critic, and Simon Bridges once called the Commissioner a wokester.
I'm not Simon Bridges, if you have noticed. I'm the leader of Chris Luxon, the leader of the National Party and Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Chris Luxon, the leader of the National Party and Prime Minister of New Zealand, then confirmed he was moving house, selling up his Wellington apartment, and finally shifting up the road to his official residence, refurbishments now complete. As well, he sold off 2 of his other properties. Truly a man of the people.
Let's be clear, I'm wealthy, I'm, sorted.
October rolled round, and with it the traditional Green Party headline. The membership did their reconvening re Darlene Tana and engaged in that ritual act of rat swallowing. Yes, the party of principles put principle aside and waka jumped Darlene Tana right out of Parliament.
We've never pretended that democracy is not a messy process.
With Darlene Tana now old news, the political landscape was crying out for a new scandal. And right on cue, the National Party delivered.
Commerce Minister Andrew Bailey has apologised for his conduct after a complaint that he repeatedly called a worker a loser and swore at him while on a business trip.
Believe it or not, it gets worse. Amateur comedian Andrew Bailey found himself on an apology tour after a winery worker lodged a formal complaint about his conduct. The worker claimed the minister had told him to take some wine and F off.
Did he call the worker a loser?
Yes.
Did he hold up the shape of an L on his forehead?
Again, yes, I did.
November saw the Treaty Principles Bill at last arrive at Parliament, the legislation coming for its first debate.
Treaties are supposed to unite people, not divide them.
You are a liar. ACT are seen to be pulling the strings and running the country, like the KKK with a swipe card.
Then came the vote and an interruption, with TikTok star Hana Rafferty Maipi Clark refusing to play by the rules. Oh, cried the government parties again. Won't somebody think of parliamentary standards? The haka served to be just a taster of what was to come as a hikoi made its way down the country to arrive at the Beehive. The turnout was monumental, some 42,000 people according to police estimates, though not everyone could agree on the numbers.
Seen far big ones than this.
First of all, there were nearly twice as many people protesting the size of Dunedin Hospital.
So, I put this at about 22,000 max.
There were at least 70 to 80,000. Yeah.
As well, in November, the Prime Minister delivered a state apology to the victims of abuse while in state care, an emotional day.
It was wrong and it should never have happened.
There was some scepticism from survivors, though, given the government's reluctance to discuss compensation and its insistence on pressing ahead with a new boot camp scheme for teen offenders. The coalition insisted this would be different from those in the past. This would work.
2 teens who went through the government's controversial military-style boot camp pilot are on the run.
They've gone out, armed themselves and gone out on a crime spree.
December allowed journalists to indulge in their favourite maritime puns, with at long last an announcement on the future of the Cook Strait ferries.
Anchors aweigh.
Smooth sailing or choppy waters.
A lot of details been left floating.
It was a plan to make a plan, an announcement of an announcement with very few details. But Nicola Willis was unapologetic.
I've delivered.
Perhaps she meant delivered the way Labour did with its year of delivery. With the end of year at last in sight, politicians fronted for their typical end-of-year interviews, including on TVNZ's Q&A, where Christopher Luxon had plenty to say to you.
I would just say to you, no, what I'd say to you, I would just say to you, what I'd just say to you is, well, I'd just say to you, what I'm saying to you is, I would say to you, but what I'd just say to you is, what I'd say to you, Jack.
You're saying a lot of things to me.
And lots more to say next year, no doubt. That was Focus on Politics for 2024. I'm Craig McCulloch. See you again in 2025. Matiwa.